All right, let's jump right in. We're about to pull back the curtain on something that powers pretty much everything you do online, but you've probably never even thought about it. And we're going to use a super simple analogy to make it all click: the invisible waiter. I mean, ever wonder about that? You book a flight on some website, and boom, it magically appears in your calendar. You order dinner, and suddenly you're tracking the driver on a map that's from a totally different company. How on earth do all these separate apps, built by different people, all communicate so flawlessly?
Well, it turns out there's a secret. They're all speaking a hidden universal language. It's a language that lets them ask for stuff, get things done, and just work together. And that language? It's the language of APIs.
So what even is an API? The textbook definition is Application Programming Interface. But honestly, forget the jargon. Just think of it as a contract. It's a set of rules that lets one piece of software talk to another without having to know all the messy, complicated stuff happening on the inside. And this is where our analogy really brings it home. Picture our restaurant. You're the customer, or in the tech world, the client. The kitchen, where all the food and ingredients are, that's the server. Now, you can't just barge into the kitchen and start making your own steak, right? You need someone in the middle, and that's the waiter. In our digital world, the API is the waiter. It takes your specific order, goes to the kitchen, and brings back exactly what you asked for. Simple as that.
Okay, so if the API is our waiter, how do we actually place an order? Well, it all comes down to the anatomy of a request.
Your order starts with a URL. And it's way more than just a web address. It's a super precise set of directions for our waiter. The scheme, that HTTP part, is like deciding which restaurant to go to. The authority is the exact street address. The path tells the waiter your table and which menu you're looking at. And that query at the end, that's you adding special instructions like extra sauce or sort by price.
But it's not enough to just show up. You have to tell the waiter what you want to do. In API speak, these are HTTP methods. A GET request is you just asking, hey, can I see the menu? Or can you check on my order? POST is when you're ready to place a new order. PUT is for when you change your mind and need to change the whole thing. And delete? Yep, you guessed it, cancel my order.
Your request can also have headers. Think of these as a little note you pass to the waiter for the chef, with special instructions like, I'm allergic to peanuts. And for bigger orders, like when you post something new, you include a body, which has all the juicy details of exactly what you want. So, the kitchen gets your order and does its thing. Then what? The waiter, our API, comes back with a response. This response has two key parts: the data you wanted, which is basically your food, and a status code. That's kind of like the waiter's quick verbal update on how things are going. And these status codes are pretty intuitive. If you see a 200 OK, that's great news. It's the waiter saying, success, your order is here. But if you get a 404 not found, that's the waiter coming back and saying, oof, sorry, we're all out of that. Generally, any number in the 200s is good to go, while the 400s means something went wrong with your request. All right, so we get how one person talks to one kitchen. But modern apps are way, way more complicated than a single restaurant, right? So let's scale up our analogy. Let's go from a small restaurant to a massive food hall. Because here's the reality. A huge app, like a delivery service, isn't one gigantic kitchen doing everything. No way. It's a collection of many small, independent kitchens, each one a specialist. You've got one kitchen that only handles user accounts, another one that only processes payments, and a third that just manages menus. In tech, this is called a microservice architecture. Okay, so with all these different kitchens, who do you even talk to? You're not going to run around to each one, right? You talk to the maitre d' standing at the front door. This is our API gateway. It's the single front door for everything. It checks to make sure you're allowed in, manages the crowds, and then cleverly sends every part of your order to the right kitchen. So from your perspective as the user, it feels incredibly simple. You make one request to the app. But behind the scenes, that API gateway is working like a master conductor, taking your request and orchestrating a whole symphony of other requests to all these different microservices, payments, inventory, you name it, and then brings all the answers back to you in one perfect package. So now we've got this massive, bustling food hall. The question is, how do we make sure it runs like a 5-star operation and doesn't just descend into chaos? This is where the business side of APIs really comes into play. To manage all this complexity, you absolutely need a solid rulebook. Everyone has to be on the same page. In the software world, we call this API management. It's the whole strategy for how you design, publish, and look after all the APIs buzzing around in your system.
And good API management really stands on 4 pillars. First, API design. That's about making your menu clear and easy for anyone to read. Then there's API monitoring. That's the manager keeping an eye on the kitchen to make sure food's coming out fast and correctly. API documentation is the official recipe book, explaining exactly how to use each service. And finally, API security. Well, that's your bouncer, making sure only the right people get through the door. And hey, don't just take my word for it. This stuff has a huge real-world impact. Look at this quote from Surscripts. By properly managing their whole system, which is all about APIs, they got much higher quality and availability. That's a massive win for any business.
All of this has led to a really smart, modern strategy, the API-first approach. Think about it. Instead of building the whole kitchen and then figuring out how the waiters will talk to it, you design the menu and the waiter's language first. You design the API before you even write a line of code for the app itself. That way, you know everything will connect perfectly from the very beginning.
So when you boil it all down, APIs are so much more than just some technical acronym. They're the invisible workforce of the entire digital world. They're the waiters, the translators, the messengers that connect every single app and service we rely on, every single day.
They are, truly, the fundamental building blocks of our modern world, the glue that holds everything together and allows for all this amazing innovation. And that just leaves us with one really exciting question to think about. What are we going to build with them next?